Mud churned beneath Althea's crutch as the crippled outcasts staggered across the ruined battlefield, dragging the unconscious Alpha King out of a ring of ghostly wolves only she could command away. His warriors watched in horror as the useless village cripple ordered the spectral beasts to kneel, saving their king with a word that should have belonged only to royal blood. When the Alpha King woke in her arms, trembling and breathless, Althea was already leaning close to whisper her price for his life. "Give me the man you've hidden in your dungeons, the one whose scent calls my soul, or I'll tell them you are not their true king." Chapter 1. The battlefield rain turned the valley into a graveyard of mud and broken spears. Althea's crutch sank deep with each step, pain shooting through her twisted leg as she dragged the unconscious Alpha King behind a shattered wagon. Her fingers slipped on his armor, slick with blood and rain. He was heavy, God, so heavy, and her bad knee screamed every time she shifted his weight. "Stay with me," she muttered, though he couldn't hear. "I didn't haul you 1/2 mile to have you die on me now." The ghostly wolves circled them both, pale as moonlight, silent as graves, their eyes, hollow, ancient, fixed on the king's face. Waiting. They always waited at the edge of death. Usually they took what they came for. Althea had seen them her whole life. The first time she'd been hours old. Her mother bleeding out on the birthing bed, the Wraith Pack materializing through the walls like smoke. They'd come for her mother's soul, jaws open to carry it away. But when they'd looked at the squalling infant in the midwife's arms, something had changed. The lead wolf had approached the baby instead, pressing its spectral nose to her forehead. Cold had seeped into her infant bones, and the pack had stayed, circling, guarding, waiting for her to grow into whatever they'd seen in her that night. The midwife had dropped the baby in terror. The fall had shattered Althea's leg in 3 places. No healer could set the bones right, not when the Wraith Pack snarled at anyone who came too close to the child they'd claimed. By the time the ghosts had faded back into shadow, the damage was permanent. Her mother's last words whispered through blood-flecked lips. "They chose you. I don't know why, but they chose you." Now, 17 years later, Althea looked at those same hollow eyes and felt that old certainty settle in her chest. "No," she said, "he's not yours. Not today." The largest wolf tilted its head. Mist curled from its open jaws. Then, impossibly, it stepped back. The others followed, melting into the rain like they'd never been there at all. Only the cold remained, settling into Althea's bones where it had lived since birth. She stared at her shaking hands. They'd listened. They'd actually listened. Boots splashed through mud. Warriors appeared through the rain, weapons drawn, eyes wide with shock. "The king?" one started. "Still breathing," Althea said. "You're welcome." Captain Geralt pushed through the crowd, gold cloak dragging in the mud. His gaze jumped between her and the empty space where the ghost wolves had been. "You spoke to them." Not a question, an accusation. I asked nicely. "No one commands the Wraith Pack." His hand rested on his sword hilt. "No one except the king? Yes, I know the stories." Althea adjusted her grip on the crutch, fingers numb with cold. Maybe they were just tired of collecting corpses today. Geralt studied her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Finally, he turned to his men. "Get the king to safety. Carefully." They lifted Godric between them, and Althea caught a glimpse of his face. Sharp features, dark hair matted with blood, the kind of handsomeness that looked good on coins. Even unconscious, he carried himself like a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. Must be nice. "You'll ride with us," Geralt said. Another warrior scoffed. Since when do cripples... Since one of them saved your king's life. Geralt's tone could have cut glass. Help her mount. The ride to Wraith Keep blurred together. Pain, cold, the rhythmic thud of hooves on muddy ground. Althea focused on breathing through each jolt, each spike of agony from her leg. But underneath the pain, something else hummed. A scent that wasn't quite Godric's, though it clung to him. Ash and pine and storms against stone. It pulled at something deep in her chest, a hook she hadn't known was there. She'd been dreaming of that scent for months. A man behind bars, chains, eyes that burned with hunger for the sky. Today, she'd find out if the dreams were real. The keep's gates swallowed them into chaos. Servants shouted, guards ran in all directions, and someone screamed for the healers. They pulled Godric from his horse and rushed him inside. Althea dismounted badly. Her foot hit cobblestone at the wrong angle, and her knee buckled. She would have fallen if Geralt hadn't caught her elbow. "Careful!" She yanked her arm free, jamming the crutch under her armpit. "I've been careful my entire life. It didn't stop your men from leaving me on that battlefield." His jaw tightened. "They thought you were bait." Then they should have looked closer. On the ground, Godric echoed, a harsh, rattling sound that meant lungs filling with something they shouldn't. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then landed on Althea's face. Recognition flickered there, his nostrils flared. "You," he rasped. Althea knelt beside him, ignoring the protests from watching warriors. Her good knee took her weight, the bad one she kept bent behind her. "You're alive. You should thank me later. Right now, I want payment." His brow furrowed. She watched the memory surface, the battlefield, the ring of ghost wolves, her voice cutting through the rain. "You demand much," he murmured. "For a—" "Choose your next word carefully," she said softly. "I could always call the Wraith Pack here and ask them whose blood they really obey." The threat landed. She saw it in the way his pupils widened, the pulse hammering at his throat. "There's a man," she continued, voice low enough that only he could hear, "locked beneath your feet, the one whose scent clings to you but doesn't belong to you. I want to see him." Godric's hand twitched toward her, then curled into a fist. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know he calls to me in my sleep. I know you're afraid of him." She leaned closer. "I know you're more afraid of what happens if he stays buried." Something like shame crossed his face, tangled with anger. He closed his eyes and exhaled. "Bring her," he told Geralt. "No one else." Chapter 2. The Prisoner. The stairs spiraled down into darkness that smelled of damp stone and old fear. Althea's crutch echoed with each step, the sound bouncing off walls that pressed closer the deeper they went. Her leg throbbed. Each downward step sent jolts of fire through her knee. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cold. "There's a servant's entrance," Geralt said quietly from behind her, watching her struggle. "Easier grade, less stairs." "I'm fine," she bit out. "You're limping worse than when we started." "I'm always limping. That's what crippled means." But the pain was getting worse, white-hot and insistent. Her vision swam. Geralt made an exasperated sound and called up the stairs. "Bring the chair." "I don't need—" "The king commanded I bring you down alive and conscious," he interrupted. "If you pass out and crack your skull, that's on me. Sit." 2 guards appeared with a sturdy wooden chair. They carried her down the remaining flights, and Althea hated every second of it. But her leg had started trembling so badly she might have actually fallen. At the bottom, she stood on her own, pride salvaged if not intact. The scent grew stronger as they walked. Ash, pine, storms. Her heart hammered against her ribs. At the far end of a corridor lined with iron doors, one stood apart from the rest. wrapped in chains covered in sigils that made Althea's eyes water when she looked at them too long. 2 guards flanked it. They stiffened when Godric approached. "Open it," the king said. The guards exchanged glances. One fumbled with keys, hands shaking as he unlocked each chain. They fell away with heavy clanks. The door groaned inward. Cold air rushed out, carrying that scent like a breaking wave. Althea's fingers tightened on her crutch until her knuckles went white. Inside, a man hung from manacles bolted to the ceiling. His feet barely touched the ground, shoulders straining against the weight of his own body. A metal collar circled his throat, silver biting into skin already marked with old burns. Over his heart, a mark glowed faintly. A crescent moon split by a jagged line, surrounded by smaller points like stars or teeth. The Moonbrand. His head lifted slowly. Dark hair fell back from a face that was sharp and hungry. Features that echoed Godric's but with something wilder underneath. His eyes, when they found hers, weren't dull or broken. They burned. Storm grey lit from within. He stared past Godric, past the guards, directly at her. "Not you," he said, voice rough from disuse. "I have nothing left for your ghosts." Althea realised he was looking at the space behind her shoulder, where the Wraith Pack gathered like frost breath, invisible to everyone else. "They're not here for you," she said before she could stop herself. Those storm-bright eyes snapped into focus on her face. His expression changed, weariness softening, into something keen and startled. "You!" He said it like he was tasting a word he'd forgotten. "You smell like earth after rain." The sound of his voice struck her somewhere she couldn't name. Heat crawled over her skin. Behind her, the ghost wolves crowded closer, their invisible bodies pressing against her legs. Godric stepped between them. Enough! But the prisoner didn't look at him. His gaze stayed fixed on Althea, burning. She edged forward until the runes carved into the floor tingled through her boots. "What's his name?" Godric didn't answer. The prisoner did, lips twisting in faint amusement. "Reese. At least, it used to be." The name slid into her like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known she carried. The pull in her chest clenched, then unfurled. Her ghost wolves pressed closer, bowing their heads toward him. Godric noticed. His jaw hardened. "Don't cross the ward line. He's dangerous." "No more dangerous than you," Althea said quietly. "Maybe less." Reese huffed a sound that might have been laughter. "Tell her the story, brother. You dragged her down here. Let her hear it." "Brother." Althea's heart stumbled. She looked between them, saw the similarities now that she knew to look. The same jaw, the same broad shoulders. But where Godric's presence filled rooms with practiced authority, Reese's coiled quietly, dense as a storm banked behind mountains. "Why is he chained like this?" she asked. "The prophecy," Godric said, voice tight. "He was born with power that strips wolves of their alpha's command. If he walked free, the pack would lose all structure. Our enemies would destroy us." "That's the story the elders tell," Reese said softly. "Want to know what the prophecy actually says?" His chains clinked as he shifted. "It says a king will come, whose wolf answers to no command but his own heart. That he'll break the chains of blind obedience so the pack can choose who to follow. That he'll remake the bond under a new moon." His gaze slid to Godric. They heard "break" and stopped listening. The Moonbrand brightened, as if his words fed it. Althea's ghost wolves lowered themselves, bellies nearly touching the floor, muzzles pointed at him in respect. Her throat tightened. "What do you want, Reese?" He looked at her for a long moment. "To stand in the sun again. To feel dirt under my bare feet. to breathe air that hasn't been filtered through stone and rot. His gaze dropped to her crutch. You understand that, I think. The truth rang in her chest. She swallowed hard. You could test the prophecy, she said to Godric. See if the pack still chooses you when given the option. Or are you afraid they won't? Geralt shifted behind her. You overstep. Enough! Godric's eyes glittered. You owe your life to my mercy, Althea. Don't mistake that for freedom. I owe my life to my own stubbornness, she shot back. And now you owe yours to me. I saved you. This is my price. What exactly do you want? He demanded. His release? A spectacle? Althea let her breath out slowly. I want to speak with him. Alone. Without you hovering like I'm going to steal your crown. 10 minutes, Godric said after a long pause. I'll be outside. Geralt stays in the corridor. You don't cross the ward line. He left, and the silence that followed felt like the dungeon exhaling. Reese tilted his head, studying her. You have a spine. Interesting, considering they've tried to break it since you were born. You know nothing about me. I know how this kingdom treats anyone who doesn't fit. His gaze skimmed to her bad leg, and I can smell stubborn from here. She hobbled closer, stopping just outside the glowing ward circle. The runes hummed warnings. You feel them too, she said. The ghost wolves. Every time. His voice softened. I thought the dungeon was making me mad. Feeling breath but seeing nothing. Now I know. They were waiting for you. They came for my mother, Althea said quietly. The words surprised her. She never talked about this. When I was born, she was dying. They materialized to take her soul. But then they looked at me and stayed. The midwife dropped me in terror. That's how my leg broke. Reese's expression shifted. Surprise, then something that looked like recognition. They marked you from birth, he murmured. Just like me. They guard the forgotten, she said. The broken ones. That's why they answer me. Because I see what everyone else looks away from. Including me, he said. Especially you. The moment stretched between them, charged and fragile. What would you do, she asked, if you walked free? Really? He considered. Bathe in a river until the rust smell left my skin. Eat something that isn't grey mush. Lie on my back in a field and watch clouds. A pause. Sleep without listening for footsteps. No tyrant then. No monster. Just a man whose choices had been stolen before he could speak. The ghost wolves pressed against the ward circle's edge. Reese's expression flickered with wonder. They like you, he murmured. Every time they brush past, they feel like home. The word settled between them, heavy and warm. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Their time was running out. Ask, Reese said quietly. The question you're afraid to voice. Her tongue felt thick. Why do I feel you when I've never seen you before today? His throat worked. The Moonbrand burned brighter. Because they chained more than a prince down here. They chained your other half. His gaze caught hers and held. You're mine, Althea. Even if they tried to cut you away from me. The world didn't shatter, but something inside her loosened. A knot carried for years without knowing its shape. All those restless nights. The phantom hand in hers. The way the Wraith Pack circled her hut like they were guarding something even she couldn't see. Mates. I didn't agree to that, she said stiffly. Neither did I. His smile held no mockery. Question is what we do with it now. Godric's voice cut through from the doorway. Time. Reese's gaze slid past her. Whatever softness had lived in his expression vanished. You have your spectacle, brother, he said. Will you lock her up beside me now? Or send her back and pretend you didn't see what you saw? You won't speak of this to anyone, Godric said to Althea. Not the prophecy, not the brand, not what you felt. You can't command my tongue outside your court. I can command it anywhere in my territory. Reese's chains rattled. Don't threaten her. Don't tell me who I can threaten. You had everything. Pack, throne, sky. You made my choices for me. Now the one thing I have, you'd take too? His voice stayed quiet, but the runes along the walls flickered. The air grew heavy. Godric's gaze snapped to his brother. Uncertainty crossed his face. She's not yours, he said. Reese smiled, sharp. Tell that to the Wraith Pack, or to the way she can't stop breathing me in. Althea's cheeks burned. The truth clung too close to deny. I'll decide what to do with this, Godric said. For now, you return upstairs. You don't belong to them, Reese said to her. And you don't decide where I go, she answered, though the words tasted hollow. Godric reached for her arm. She jerked away. Pain shot up her leg. Her crutch slipped on damp stone, and suddenly she was falling toward the ward circle. Reese lunged. The chains snapped taut. The collar flared with blinding light. Agony streaked across his face, but his hands shot out, fingers stretching desperately toward her. He didn't reach her. The sigils stopped him a breath away. The backlash slammed into the circle. Energy crackled along the runes. The shock knocked Althea backward into Godric's chest instead. His hands closed around her elbows, steadying her. His scent, smoke and iron, wrapped around her. Familiar but wrong. Reese sagged in his chains, breathing hard. Godric swore. No more visits. This was a mistake. Althea wrenched free. If you didn't want trouble, you shouldn't have buried it. Upstairs, Godric said hoarsely. Now. She limped toward the door. At the threshold she looked back. Reese watched her, with an intensity that stole breath. Chains bound every limb, but nothing restrained the promise in his eyes. Come back, he said quietly, if you want your life to belong to you. The Wraith Pack ringed him in invisible formation, like guards around their chosen king. Godric reached past her and slammed the door shut. Chapter 3. The breaking 3 days passed like years. Althea returned to her hovel in the outer huts, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt chains that weren't hers, tasted air too thin, heard heartbeats that didn't match her own rhythm. The bond pulled tighter each night. On the third night, old Mother Haliv found her grinding herbs by candlelight, hands shaking with exhaustion. You look, the healer said flatly, like death warmed over. Thank you, very encouraging. Haliv sat, with a grunt, joints creaking. Her milky eyes studied Althea's face. You found him? Not a question. Althea's hands stilled. You know about Reese. I treated him once when he was small. The brand burned so hot his skin blistered. They told me if he died, it'd be on my head. Haliv's mouth twisted. I saved him so they could bury him alive. Some mercy. He's dying down there, Althea whispered. Not quickly, slowly, piece by piece. And you want to free him. I want... She stopped. Wanted what? She barely knew him. 3 conversations through chains and ward circles didn't make a foundation, but the pull in her chest didn't care about logic. It cared about storm-grey eyes and hands reaching through agony just to catch her. I want him to see the sun, she said finally. Just once. Haliv was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and shuffled to a shelf, pulling down a small wooden box carved with worn wolf sigils. I brewed this the year they took him, she said. Nightshade and moonflower, diluted with river water from the northern falls. It wakes dormant things, might stir whatever the collar's choking, or kill him if misused, but we'll assume you're not an idiot. Althea took the box with shaking hands. They'll punish you if they find out. Let them try. Haliv's smile was sharp. I've stitched more guts together than they have hairs on their heads. They need me more than I need their approval. She pressed another vial into Althea's palm. This one's for you. Dulls pain without clouding your mind. Your leg will need it if you keep climbing those stairs. Thank you. Thank me when you're both still breathing, Haliv said. Now go, before I change my mind. Althea chose midnight, when the keep settled into sleep and guards grew lazy at their posts. She took the servants' passage this time. Geralt had been right about the easier grade. It was still narrow and dark, but her leg managed it better. She swallowed half of Haliv's pain draught before starting, and the sharp edges of agony dulled to something bearable. At the dungeon level, 2 guards stood at their posts. One she didn't recognize. The other, a young man with a scar across his cheek. She'd treated once for an infected wound the senior healers had dismissed as not worth their time. His eyes widened when he saw her. You shouldn't be here. I need 5 minutes, she said quietly. Please, the other guard scoffed. Rules are... She saved my hand, Scarface interrupted. Could have lost it to rot, but she spent 3 nights drawing out the poison. He looked at Althea. 5 minutes. Then you're gone. 5 minutes, she agreed. They stepped aside, and she approached Reese's door, pressed her palm against the iron. Wake up, she whispered. A chain rattled inside. What are you doing? Bringing you trouble, she said. And medicine. There's a vial, 1 drop when the moon is highest. Haliv says it'll help you fight the collar. Silence, then low, surprised laughter. You're reckless. You asked for sky, she said. This is how you get it. She slid the vial under the door, heard it scrape across stone. Why? His voice came quieter. You've known me 3 days. Because you reached for me even when the chains burned you, she said. Because when I leave you here I can't breathe right. A chain scraped closer to the door. Althea! Her name in his mouth made her spine tingle. I can't stay, she said. But I'll come back at moonrise. 1 drop, Reese. If you pass out, I'll be furious. You don't frighten me. Good. You shouldn't be frightened of me. She hesitated, then added, You should know. They dropped me when I was born. The midwife. She saw the Wraith Pack and panicked, and I fell. That's how my leg broke. So if you're waiting for someone graceful and whole to save you, you picked the wrong person. I didn't pick you, he said softly. The moon did, and she doesn't make mistakes. Something warm bloomed in Althea's chest, dangerous and sweet. 1 drop, she repeated. Don't be stupid. Says the woman sneaking poison into a dungeon cell. Despite everything, she smiled. Go to sleep, Reese. Only if you promise to come back. I promise. She left before she could say anything else foolish. Hours later, the moon hung full and heavy when Althea felt it, a tug in her chest like a fishhook yanking her heart. She grabbed her crutch and went. Scarface and his partner were still at their posts. Their eyes widened when they saw her. You said 5 minutes, the other guard started. Then the corridor shook. Light blazed through Reese's door seams. Power roared down the passage like hurricane wind. Torches guttered and died. The wards on the door shattered one by one with ringing cracks. Althea staggered, thrown against the wall. The Wraith Pack howled around her, invisible bodies slamming into the door. What's happening? Scarface shouted. He's waking up, Althea breathed. The collar screamed, a thin, keening sound. The scent of burned silver filled the air. Then, with a sound like river ice cracking, the collar snapped. Silence fell so complete Althea could hear her own heartbeat thundering. Then the world exhaled. Wolves throughout the keep jerked awake with gasps. Warriors dreamed of running with no commands at their backs. In the outer huts, strays lifted their heads. The bond that had held them all, tied in neat lines to a single throne, rippled. In the corridor, Reese's power surged outward. It hit Althea like a wave, not violent but overwhelming. She felt his first full breath without the collar, the sharp joy and terror braided together. "Althea!" he gasped. His voice resonated through her chest as if spoken into her bones. Her knees buckled. The door shuddered. Cracks spidered through the wards, though the chains still held. "Get the king!" the other guard shouted, bolting up the stairs. Althea pressed her hand flat against the iron. "Reese, are you alive?" Laughter answered, hoarse, disbelieving, wild. "Alive," he said. "Too alive. I can feel them. All of them. The wolves. The bond. Threads everywhere, some thin, some thick, none of them absolute." Awe coloured his words. Gods, what did they do to themselves? Boots pounded on stone. The air shifted. Smoke, iron, royal fury. Godric appeared at the stairs, half-dressed, eyes burning gold. He took in the scene in one sweep. Cracked wards, humming chains, pale light bleeding from under the door. His gaze landed on Althea. "What have you done?" The Wraith Pack bristled around her. Invisible hackles raised. "I woke what you buried," she said. "The collar is broken." Something in him flinched. Just a tightening of his jaw, a flare of his nostrils. "Open the door." Geralt appeared behind him. "My king! The wards! Now!" The locks turned. Chains fell away. The door swung inward. Reese stood in the cell's centre, wrist and ankle chains still binding him to the floor, but the collar lay in 2 blackened pieces at his feet. The Moonbrand blazed over his heart, washing his skin in pale glow. Power poured off him in waves, barely contained. The wall runes flickered, overwhelmed. The Wraith Pack flattened themselves, then lowered their heads toward him in submission. Godric froze. The 2 brothers stared at each other, one crowned and shaken, the other chained and blazing. "You shouldn't have broken it," Godric said quietly. "You shouldn't have put it on," Reese replied. His gaze slid past his brother and found Althea. Heat punched through her chest. "You came back," he said. She tried to stand and nearly fell. Godric lifted a hand, stopping Geralt from helping her. The king's eyes stayed on Reese's face. "She always comes back. That's what I'm most afraid of." Reese's chains rattled as he shifted. "Then your fear is well placed, because she's not yours to command." Above them, somewhere in the keep, wolves began to howl. Chapter 4. The Choice. "They feel it." Reese's voice was soft with wonder. "All of them." Godric's hands curled into fists. "What did you do to my pack?" "Nothing they didn't beg for in their sleep. You pulled their wolves into line and locked them there. I just loosened a few knots. You'll bind them to yourself instead. If I'd wanted that, I'd have yanked. I tugged. A whisper, not a command. Now they know there's a difference." Althea pushed herself upright, using the wall for support. Her leg burned despite Haliv's draft. "Enough. This ends now, or it breaks everything." Both men looked at her. She took a breath and met Godric's eyes. "When was the last time you slept through the night?" He blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "When?" she pressed. "A week ago, a month, a year." His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. "You're drowning," she said softly. "I can see it." Every time you give a command, it costs you. Every time a wolf's loyalty wavers, you feel it. You've been holding the entire pack together with your bare hands for so long. You've forgotten what it feels like to let go. Something cracked in his expression. Just for a moment. Raw exhaustion bled through. I don't have the luxury of letting go, he said, voice rough. If I do, everything falls apart. Or, Althea said, someone else catches what you drop. She turned to Reese. And you've been alone so long you don't remember how to be part of something. You'll pull too hard without meaning to, and tear the bonds apart. Reese's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. So, here's what happens, Althea said, heart pounding. You share it, both of you. Let the pack choose which king to follow, or follow both. Godric keeps the slow work, council, treaties, governance. Reese takes the wild edge, battles, runs, the parts where prophecy lives. Godric stared at her. That's never been done. Because no one's ever tried, she said. You're afraid they won't choose you if given the option. But maybe some will. Maybe that's enough. And if it's not, then you were never as strong as you thought, Reese said softly. But I don't believe that. I've seen you carry this pack for years. That takes more strength than I've ever had. The admission hung in the air between them. Godric looked at his brother, really looked at him, for the first time since entering the cell. His shoulders sagged for just a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I'm so tired, Reese. I've been tired for years, and I didn't know how to ask for help without admitting I wasn't strong enough to do this alone. The vulnerability in those words cut deeper than any accusation could have. Reese's expression softened. You were strong enough. You just shouldn't have had to be. Something passed between them. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but understanding. The first fragile thread of it. Godric straightened. And when he spoke again, his voice was steady. If I do this, you don't leave. Either of you. The elders will tear this apart if you run. I'm not running, Althea said. Neither am I, Reese added. Godric looked at them both for a long moment. Then he called to the corridor. Bring me the key to his chains. The guard's face went pale. My king! The elders will hear of this after it's done. Move! The guard bolted. Silence fell, thick and charged. Althea's chest heaved. She realized the Wraith Pack was pressing toward the circle, teeth bared. Not at Reese, but at the runes still holding him. The guard returned with shaking hands. Godric took the keys and stepped into the warded circle. He unlocked Reese's wrists first. Metal clanked to the floor. Red grooves ringed Reese's skin where iron had bitten for years. His fingers flexed slowly, as if he couldn't believe they were free. Godric knelt, to release the ankle shackles. When he stood, Reese was unbound for the first time since childhood. The dungeon seemed to hold its breath. Reese took one careful step forward, then another. The runes hummed but didn't bite. He stopped an arm's length from his brother. You could still order them to chain me again. Godric's hand twitched at his side. Old habits, old warnings, old fears. Then he looked at Althea. Will you stay? In this keep? In this kingdom? Reese frowned. Why does it... Because the Wraith Pack goes where she goes, Godric interrupted. Because half my council already wants both of you dead. If she runs, they'll say it's proof you can't hold what you claim. Althea's mouth went dry. You'd make me responsible for this? I'm asking you to stand, he said. And for once the command in his voice was gone. Beside him, before them. Show them what this new bond looks like. Reese turned to her. You owe them nothing. You can walk away. I owe you, she said. We're mates, he finished. Yes, but that's between us. I won't tie your neck with the same rope that held mine." The choice wrapped around her like a cloak. Stay at the centre of a storm, or slip away and watch them tear each other apart from a distance. The Wraith Pack pressed close, waiting. "I won't run," she said quietly. "Not this time." Relief flickered in Reese's eyes, chased by fear on her behalf. Godric's shoulders loosened. "Then we move fast," the king said, "before the news twists ahead of us." By dawn, they stood on the highest battlement under an iron sky. Wolves lined the ramparts in human form, drawn by the summoning horn, half-dressed and confused. Conversations died when they saw Reese walking free. The sight hit like a thrown stone. Ripples of shock, bared teeth, wide eyes. Orendelle, the spy mistress, stood near the centre. Her pale eyes sharpened when she saw the chains gone. This wasn't approved by council. "No," Godric said. "I decided long ago that burying my brother didn't need your approval. Unburying him needs even less." Murmurs spread. The word brother cracked through the crowd like ice. Godric stepped onto the central parapet. "Listen. You know me. You followed me through winter and war. Tonight I ask something harder. I ask you to hear the truth." He gestured to Reese. "This is my brother, born with the Moonbrand. The elders said he'd destroy us. They convinced me binding him was the only way to keep you safe." His gaze swept the crowd. They were wrong, and so was I. Murmurs rolled like distant thunder. "Show them," Godric said to Reese. Reese looked out over the pack. The Moonbrand brightened. He drew a slow breath. Althea felt it, a rippling through the air like wind through grass. Threads tugged somewhere invisible. No command, just gentle invitation. Wolves shifted uneasily. A few pressed fists to their chests. "He's touching my wolf," one young warrior gasped, not forcing, asking. Others echoed the same. Some resisted, locking their jaws, clinging to Godric's bond, but enough didn't resist. A cluster of warriors near the front stepped forward and sank to their knees. "Alpha," they breathed. The word hung heavy. Reese eased the pull back. The pressure lightened. Wolves exhaled, staggered. Those who'd knelt didn't rise. "We feel two paths," one said, voice rough with wonder. "One to the crown we know, one to the mark we feared. For the first time, we can choose." Orendelle's fury sharpened her words. "This is chaos, division. You'll tear the pack in half for a cripple's fantasy and a cursed prince's ambition?" Every eye turned to Althea. She stepped forward, leaving Reese's side. Her leg shook but held. "This isn't my fantasy. I didn't ask to be born with bones that don't obey, or to have my mother die so the Wraith Pack would choose me instead." She met Orendelle's glare. "I only chose not to look away when I saw him." She turned to the crowd. "You locked your true king because words scared you. You told yourselves it was mercy. It was fear." Gasps, anger, agreement, doubt. Godric raised his hands. "I'm not blameless. I wore a crown that wasn't wholly mine. If you must hate someone, hate me." The admission shook them more than any order could. Reese moved to stand beside Godric. Two figures shoulder to shoulder, one crowned in gold, one in moonlight. "I don't ask you to abandon the man who kept your borders while I slept in chains," Reese said. "I ask you to see me. Not prophecy, not fear, me. If you want to keep following Godric, do it. If your wolf answers me, follow that. We'll share the weight." "How?" someone called. "Two alphas," Godric answered. "I hold the bonds of those who choose me. I rule council, treaties, the slow work of keeping us fed. Reese holds the bonds of those who choose him. He leads runs, battles, the wild edge. When our paths cross, we decide together." "It won't hold," Orendelle spat. General Javen stepped forward and went to one knee.
My wolf answers both, he said slowly. So let strategy stay with the crown, and teeth go with the mark. He bowed to Godric, then touched his fist to his heart facing Reese. The Moonbrand flared in answer. Another knee hit stone, then another. Some bowed to Godric, some to Reese. A few stayed standing, uncertain. It wasn't tidy. It wasn't unanimous. But it was a beginning. The Wraith Pack shifted, flowing between clusters. They hovered longest around those who'd chosen Reese. Then they stepped forward as one. The largest came to stand before Althea, towering, breath cold as graves. It bowed, not to Godric, not to Reese, to her. The others followed, spectral submission rippling through invisible ranks. A roar rose from the warriors, not anger. Acclaim. "Reese!" some shouted. "Godric!" others answered. And then, "Wraith Queen!" The chants wove together, messy but alive. Reese leaned close to Althea. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." She exhaled tension carried for years. No cages. Not for us, not for them. Far below, wolves woke with the strange sense that loyalty was something they could hold in their own hands. And under the iron sky, 3 figures stood at the centre of a storm they'd chosen to walk into. Althea wrapped her fingers around Reese's and didn't let go. Epilogue. 3 weeks later. The council chamber smelled of old wood and older arguments. Althea sat beside Reese at a table expanded to fit 3 chairs instead of 1. Godric sat on Reese's other side. Between them, scrolls covered the surface. Border reports, trade agreements, requests from outlying villages. Elder Maver glared from across the table. "This arrangement remains functional," Godric interrupted, "which is more than I can say for your objections." 3 weeks since the battlements. 3 weeks of shouting matches. 2 assassination attempts that had failed spectacularly when the Wraith Pack intervened. And 1 elder who'd fled to the southern provinces rather than accept the new order. It wasn't perfect. Some warriors had left, unable to stomach the change. A few villages refused to acknowledge Reese's authority. The remaining elders protested daily. But the borders held. Trade continued. And slowly, so slowly, the pack was learning to breathe. The northern incursion 4 days ago proved the split bond works, Javen said, dropping a report on the table. Godric's tactics got our forces in position. Reese's wolves hit like thunder. The enemy retreated before dawn. Maver's mouth thinned, but he didn't argue with success. "The southern villages need more healers," Althea said. "They're requesting." "Then give them to you," Godric said, making a note. "You'll distribute resources properly this time." The elders hated it, this casual division of power, this easy back and forth, but it worked. After the meeting, Althea found Reese on the balcony overlooking the training grounds. Below, wolves sparred, some following Godric's structured drills, others running in loose packs under Reese's guidance. Different styles, same goal. "How's your leg?" he asked without turning. "Sore," she admitted, "but Haliv's new brace helps. I walked the entire keep today without stopping." "That's good." He turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "I need to ask you something. You're always asking things. This one's important." He took her hand, thumb tracing patterns on her knuckles. "Stay, not because the kingdom needs you. Because I do. Not as obligation, as choice." Her heart thudded. "You realize you're asking a crippled half-wolf to be your queen?" "I'm asking the woman who dragged a king from death and woke another from chains." His smile was soft, fierce. "I'd be a fool not to." "You forgot something," she said. His brow furrowed. "What?" "To ask what I want." He blinked, then laughed, surprised and delighted. "You're right. What do you want, Althea?" She pretended to consider.
tapping her chin. Better food in the outer huts. Healers who don't sneer at me. A king who doesn't snore. I don't snore. You absolutely snore. Like a congested bear. I've been in a dungeon for 17 years. How would you even... He stopped, catching the teasing glint in her eyes. You're mocking me. I'm deciding if you're worth the trouble, she corrected, but her smile softened. Ask me again tomorrow, and the day after. Keep asking until I'm sure. I can do that. He stepped closer, hands gentle on her waist. But for today, she rose on her toes, her good leg taking most of the weight, and kissed him. It was soft at first, testing. Then his hand came up to cradle her face, and the kiss deepened, tasting of sunlight and promises and the sharp, sweet edge of new beginnings. The bond flared, steady and bright, like coals coaxed to flame. A wolf howled from the training grounds. Someone shouted something crude. They broke apart, breathless and laughing. Your pack has terrible timing, Althea said. Our pack, Reese corrected. And yes, they do. Far across the courtyard, Godric watched from another balcony. A faint smile tugged his mouth before he turned back toward the council chambers and the endless work of building something new from old bones. On the battlements, spectral wolves paced, guardians of a kingdom learning that strength came not from one voice, but from the choice to listen to many. And in the fading light, a girl marked by ghosts and a king marked by prophecy stood together, held upright by a bond that answered to no command, but their own hearts. The pack howled in two harmonies, weaving into one. It sounded like hope. It sounded like home. The end. And that's Althea and Reese's story, from dungeon chains to shared throne, from broken outcast to Wraith Queen. Before you go, I'm curious. Which moment hit you hardest? The collar breaking, or when Godric finally admitted he was drowning? And here's the real question. If you were Althea, would you have stayed and faced the council, or walked away to protect yourself? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. If this story gave you all the feels, smash that like button so more people can find it. Share it with someone who loves forbidden romance and disability rep done right. And subscribe because I've got more epic fantasy love stories coming your way. Until next time, remember, sometimes the people they call broken are the ones destined to remake the world. See you in the next story.